Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us for today's guest talk. It's my pleasure to introduce Sadiq Salah. He is motivated by all things technology. After completing his undergraduate at U of T in financial economics, he went to work for one of the banks, but shortly became bored and unmotivated. Not long after, he made the jump to entrepreneurship, providing technical solutions for 5 years. Through that journey, he ended up developing expertise in the vehicle telematics industry and now works at Untitled in their solutions engineering department. Sadiq is also an immigrant and came to Canada in 1995. Prior to that, he spent most of his early years as a nomad with his grandmother in Somalia. She taught him how to care for others and always give his best. Sadiq, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Caitlin, for having me, and thank you, Pepper Team. Appreciate it.
Excellent. So we have a few questions for you today. I alluded to it a little bit in your intro, but you have had an interesting journey. Tell us a bit about your personal journey, from studying economics to now working as a solutions engineer and kind of teaching yourself along the way. Tell us a bit about that experience and how you got to be where you are today.
Absolutely. So I graduated from U of T 2008. That was the financial crisis year too. So it was quite hard to get a job. So it took me about a year to secure a job with one of the banks. And shortly after that, again, like that was the norm, right? The norm is that you finish your financial economics or commerce degree. The next step is Bay Street because it's cool, right? See what you should be doing. So you just follow along. You don't even know what your goals are, what your passion is, what your desire is. You just check marks. So I went and I knew my personality. My personality is such that if I'm not challenged enough, I get bored really easily. Mm-hmm. So when I went to the banks, in the beginning it was quite challenging, quite exciting, a lot of work. But after that, through automation, which I believe in tremendously, I don't believe in going to work and doing mundane tasks again and again. If you can outsource that to a machine, that's freaking awesome. So that's what we did, me and my colleague working at the bank. We looked at our workflow and we began to write VBA code to automate. That's how I actually first time got into coding and the programming world. It was just basic stuff in Excel to connect to the services that we need and to do the analysis by the machine rather than us, making a mistake with it. And then at the end of the day, just focus on, doing the job, which is adding the quality of catching the mistakes in the file, etc. So anyways, that was really good. And I realized that, okay, I had an aptitude for coding. And so after that, the job just became very, very easy. Didn't have to do much, just press a button, let the code run, and then answer the why and the how. Focus on that, not the what and how to do it, right? Just the why, like why this happened. Either market closed that day or a book error, whatever, you can answer it. So anyways, after that, the job became very dull and kind of moved on to maybe TD Securities after that. And I thought to myself, maybe a little more challenging with data. Again, same sort of experience, profit and loss, again, Excel. Again, through automation, my peak for growth, just was not like, I keep reaching it very quickly. There was nothing else to do. Then tried a couple more other companies, tried a couple more industries, same type of role, but from different industries and from consumer good to insurance. I tried. And all turned out to be the same. Like in the beginning, quite challenging. After that, I automate things out. And then it's just, again, just becomes mundane. So anyways, that's when I realized that I had passion for technology. And I began to listen to myself and stop listening to those around me because I get to live my life, right? So I began to go into Excel automations as a business. So I started that, selling contract services to companies like Enbridge and to Ontario Power Authority, to Enbridge for the automation and lighting. So then I realized I'm really good at process automation. I'm really good at understanding a problem and solving it. Why not just extend my services more to like work services? So I did that and embraced the outsourcing model. And again, didn't know much about project management, just know that I want to solve problems, don't know how to negotiate price, don't know how to price things out. So again, you get to learn a lot of different things. As an entrepreneur, like pricing itself is quite difficult and complex. Same thing with project management and managing, scope. Very, very important. Delivering things on time so that you don't, consume most of the resources given to you. Nonetheless, using the outsourcing model, you're not really in control. So I've lost a lot there in the beginning, but again, all that loss was just learning. It was painful. And with pain comes a lot of good experiences, so you learn what to do and not to do. So nonetheless, then I began to flip that model to local models, said, you know what, forget it. Maybe we should get to work with the people locally, create local jobs. So we did that. And again, began to grow very rapidly. We were doing very well at that time. And again, we got stuck with some very large projects which were like poorly negotiated. Again, probably due to me, my inability at that time to be that tough guy. I'm always the nice guy, you know, give the customer what they want, let them add whatever they want to do. So again, I had a lot of scope creep into the projects. Again, not the developer's fault, my fault as a project manager. So anyways, we ended up losing quite a bit of money on that, but always deliver the project on time and on budget and make sure that we get the recommendation. That was the goal. Anyways, after that, I realized, you know what, I need to go reassess myself, get rid of this business for a little bit. I have good experience here. And I think the best way for me to accomplish something is to actually know what I'm doing. Like I was really good at the front end at that time because when you sell to a company, you translate that business requirement or technical solution. Translating and passing documents to developers could be hard for them to interpret and understand what the requirement is. If the engineer or the project manager can do the front end stuff for them and do the database scheming, all of that, it'll be a lot smoother. So I began to get into that kind of stuff. And then eventually I decided, you know what, now is not the time. Maybe I should go into my own product development. So I got into product development mode where I stopped getting contracts or looking for contracts. And I continued that model for a little bit. And then through that adventure, I met a very nice gentleman through a mutual client who offered me to come work with him on a part-time basis in telematics. So I took that opportunity as I did my business, and then the two together. And eventually, one kind of phased out because the demand and the competition for technical development is quite difficult. Given that there's so many companies offering the same exact services as you're offering. One of the things I did for a member was, and it kind of crushed me really hard. And this is one of the decisions why I made not to. Was one of these trading companies, they're like penny stock. So I don't want to name their name, just give them confidentiality on that. So anyways, I bid for that contract and I actually went to present tremendously. I made PowerPoint presentation. I understood the entire problem. It was a huge project. They wanted to revamp their entire website, plus connect some data points back to the trading platform. It was a good, decent sized project. So I went through I think 4 or 5 rounds of bidding. And at the end, they were actually respectful to call me back. And again, I didn't take anybody with me. It was just me with my laptop and my suitcase, me, the salesman, me, the technical guy, me just, wearing all the different hats. So I did that. But anyways, they were quite respectful to me that they actually called me back and said, can we have an interview with you so we can explain, what's going on with the project, if you got it or not. So anyways, they didn't do it over the phone. How people fire you over the phone or fire you over the email. It's not good. These companies are very respectful. They called me, sat down with their board, so their project managers and the business owner. They explained to me why I didn't get the project, because they felt I was too small. That's it.
Right.
It wasn't about whether I had the technical ability to deliver it. They just felt like, given the size, I didn't have the resources to deliver that project.
Right.
And the advice, they said, next time, why not bring 2 or 3 people that you can work with, even if they're not the same company, and they're there, you show that strength, because the presentation was awesome. We would love to give you that project.
Mm-hmm.
So from that moment on, I've kind of transitioned over to telematics and putting more time into that and learning. Again, because I'm always starting something new, right? It was awesome because you had to now learn some new technology. You had to learn how vehicle telematic devices work. And again, I love when I'm getting thrown into the ocean. So I was given that opportunity to learn on my own, learn about how to program text scripting on devices and how to create a time intervals and sleep and all of that just through reading. So I did that. And from there on, it's just wonderful. That company grew. And I got sold off to another company. I was retained. And then from there on, I did a great job at that company as well. I got solid recommendation. I left because made a decision to want to go work for Geotab, because Geotab was a company I admired from a long time. Because I was the only person one of the only few, I would say, who understood Geotab products. Within even our resellers, we used to resell it through a third-party company. So I was the go-to for that stuff always. So I felt like it was a natural step that I should go there, but I knew the challenge is going to be this. I don't have any formal training in computer science, and I know that geotech likes to hire only engineers. And which 90% of the workforce have their mechanical, electrical engineering degrees. They all got that little ring, right? So, anyways, blessings of God. Again, they gave me some assignments to write up to prove my aptitude. I did that, worked hard, and again, like I'm always wanting to learn. So that was kind of my journey, how I got there, and now I'm here, and I'm very happy to be here because there's not a single dull moment a day in development and troubleshooting errors, because it's just the days fly by, and again, do what you're passionate about, right? So that's kind of my passion. It took me a while to kind of figure out that, hey, like what I was looking to do, if you really think about it, was just computer science, right? Computer science, because computer code is always challenging and you're always doing something different with it, right? Because so that's why, I feel like I'm so blessed, because the early on journey was all about that, leaving all those jobs because they were not challenging. And then my own journey to get the skills I needed by being an entrepreneur. But then again, having all the hardships, and then now being here and then looking back and saying, hey, do I regret any of that? No, I don't. It just took me a little bit longer to find my footing in computer science, right? If I had that, knowledge 10 years ago, what I know now, I would have gone to computer science certification right away after university and then pursue some sort of corporate jobs to get further training. And then once I have that, go ahead and do the entrepreneurship stuff on the side, right? Because we always have that passion for business.
Right. So you talked a little bit about your first experience and how you saw this problem. There was inefficiency and the ability, potentially to automate it. Now at that time, you had never really done coding or any sort of development. Is that correct? So
Absolutely.
What prompted you to say, because you're working within a big bank, right? I mean, they certainly have a large technology department and all sorts of resources. But you said, I want to learn this, I want to solve it. What kind of prompted that? And then how did you go about actually doing that and doing it in a way that, was successful?
Yeah, fantastic question, by the way. So what happened is, there was maybe about 14 of us in that department, right? And our job was just portfolio management and consolidation. So our job was, I think we had a target of maybe 30 to 40 portfolios that we got to go through per week to make sure they're consistently clean, right? Meaning that when that portfolio manager meets with a large customer to explain the returns, there's no mistakes due to the book or market error. That's our job. So I realized that everyone was spending a lot of time on, and the reason why I really got motivated is not because I didn't even know about the technology itself yet. I knew of Excel, I knew of the VLOOKUPs and just the basic stuff, right? But I didn't know, and I knew that you can record a macro by hitting a record, but I didn't know the VPA, I think it's F11 or something, or F12 to get to it, the VPA backend of it, meaning that, now you have Visual Basic application, and Visual Basic is the language that this product is made in, and then you have the application within this product, meaning that I can extend it. So I wasn't even thinking about that deeply. Now I can explain it better. All I was thinking about that time was this, that we're spending way too much time every day, maybe about 4 to 5 hours, just digging things, right? Double checking once the book values got downloaded, then you will go to Yahoo Finance, look for that stock, and then try to compare, and then run a lot of, Excel functions, right, to match things, to calculate things, formulas, and then maybe like do a nested if statement to highlight things, and then use the style sheet to trigger things. So I was like, we're spending too much time just prepping the file, right? And then we're spending so little time at the end to look at the results. And sometimes it's because you probably already got frustrated with the process to get there, because maybe you got an error to get the file. It happens that way. But sometimes it gives you error. Sometimes the market value, you can't find it because it was closed that day. You can't even explain that variation. So you have to, after you got your whole workstation ready, now think about the why, and then and the why could be, by the way, wrong answer, because what you built that could be wrong, the way you built it. So I thought to myself, there's a lot of risk there in terms of getting the answer, the why at the end, and making sure that we can say, it's good. Yep, go ahead, take the file, upload it back to their system that runs overnight again, so that manager can get their files clean the next morning. That why could be wrong. So I thought to myself, maybe a machine can do things better. And then there was a Russian colleague of mine who's really good at it. We started talking, having a coffee. He's like, yeah, we can write something. So I proposed the idea, He's like, yeah, it's a great idea. We can write something. And he's like, maybe we can even, instead of downloading manually the files and then creating all the different tabs, let's you and I sit down and just document the entire process, right? From the beginning to the end. So we processed everything, said, okay, you're getting back these number sheets. This is coming from there. This is coming from Yahoo or Finance, okay? And then what's supposed to happen, the form is this is supposed to go through. And our benchmark, I think, was like, I think it was like a 10%. I think anything minus plus 10% is explanation. Why? Something like that. Don't call me on that, but there was a number target that was given to us. And this is how we compare deviation, either up and down. So we captured all of that, and then we began to program, right? So when we begin to program, I think it's easier for somebody to learn even Excel VPA if they have, first of all, number one, passion for automation, and number two, if they can wisely break down the problems in smaller chunks, because you can just Google it, right? How to do this, boom, you get the function back, you read about it, you try to implement a small portion of it, and then that's how you learn, and then you make notes. And then sometimes you end up with something called, and it happens to me very frequently, especially in the evenings now, you go into a loop of learning, right? So the more you dig, for example, you Google async and await functions and how they work, right? Once you start reading about that, then all you run into the idea of promises. Okay, as an example. So now if you want to learn, just don't memorize the syntax async and wait, go learn about promises. Okay, all promises also related to that then. Why is that then not preferred versus async? Then you go into circle learning. By the time you come back out of that circle, you have a very good understanding of the concept, right? So that's what that part gave me, the opportunity to learn deeply about Excel. And I did. And one of my motivations was just to, get rid of that 4 hour for everybody. 4 hours it takes to prep the files. And at the end of the day, we share all of that with everybody, right? The entire department.
Yeah. Very interesting. So you touched a little bit on this idea of like breaking down problems and making that into smaller, more pieces and using that as a way to learn. I mean, I think that's a really great strategy for everyone to sort of think about and sort of internalize in their own learning process. But because I know you've learned a lot over the years, you've taught yourself many different aspects, and I understand you're learning about APIs now. What are some other strategies or approaches? Like, what does that learning journey look like for you?
So yeah, for the next 4 months, I do have a goal now, because I think to know it and practice it and learn every day is great, but you also need a validation, right? So my goal, again, within my KPAs for the next 4 or 5 months is to get some sort of JavaScript certifications. I'm looking at, I think, a few courses already online that were recommended by my colleagues at DeoTab to actually go ahead and validate, because those courses will give you projects that are going to be hands-on experience, where you can get to learn everything from the raw perspective. So right now, like for the past, I would say since I got here, it's almost a year now. It's going to be August. I've already changed the role. So I started one role. I already been promoted to a different role. Now I'm working with the application team, SDK, API, which I never imagined would happen. But again, the culture I was in gave me the opportunity to spend a lot of time with their SDK and read about it. And also my manager was awesome, both like the current and previous one, because the way they enabled me and even like share their own experiences about their journey and videos that they've watched and things that they take in and how to solve problems and what to learn, all of that being shared. So now the next little while, my goal is to validate what I know by taking courses to get the certification, because validation does really help, because now you can prove that you know those things. And I don't mean like just watching videos in Udemy and, following along and then just you're done, right? I'm talking about taking a course that requires an exam at the end, right? Following along videos, no problem, but then you must do an exam at the end to validate what you know. And I think that's for anybody who wants to get into computer science, don't want to go back 4 years to university. Number one, make sure you're passionate about it. If you are, then begin to learn on your own. Are you spending a couple hours every night? Does it bother you if you do? If it does, then this is not for you. If it doesn't, then it means that you have passion for it. Continue. As you learn, look for courses online that are affordable. Some of them are actually extremely affordable. Validate, and take those courses, right? And then set up some projects on the side for yourself to have fun, right? For example, one of the projects that I want to do is a mapping project for my company. And I already saw, because I always think from a business perspective, you need because I do understand. I really enjoy that side of business, meeting customers and understanding their problems and then trying to strengthen the technical solution. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I saw some opportunity within their map where I think some customers can benefit from this feature that I want to develop on my own. And I'm going to go ahead and take that on my own project. And if it's not a well adapted project, it's okay. I just learned about my integration. It's awesome, right? So keep moving, keep doing something, and don't ever worry about what if this, what if that. Those things are nonsense. Focus on what is now or what is it going to be, right? That's what matters most.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how the education model and like what education means today has changed so much, right? It used to be you go to university, you go to college, you get a degree, and that's kind of like then you're okay for a while, right? Like going back at least a generation or two.
Yeah.
But now that's not the reality, right? And it's like what you talked about, this idea of find something you're excited about because it's going to keep changing, especially if you're in any sort of technology field, whether that's development or marketing. I know we have a bit of a mixed group here, but in both those streams they change so fast, right?
Absolutely.
So,
And also, like even those learning programming, don't jump into libraries. I have not learned a single library, no React, no Angular. I don't really care for those things. I'm learning everything raw. So I'm doing everything raw JS. And if you do everything, that's just my example. Let's say you're taking Python, right? So if you can learn Python raw, right? Or C# raw, whatever it is, raw. Try not to rely on libraries right from the get-go as a learner, because then you will never understand how the functions are put together, because those libraries are hidden from you is utilizing, for example, jQuery is utilizing JavaScript heavily, but it makes things easier for you. But why use jQuery, right? When you can actually do things on your own and learn how the libraries are put together and to write things from scratch in raw, right? For example, I'll give you an example. The click checkboxes event, let's say you have a list of items to check boxes and you have to click through each one of them. You can use like jQuery library, and the line of code is like maybe this long, and you just refer to the library, right? In your header. That's it, you're good. But if you try to do it, you can do it the other way. You can use like splice, right? And you can get the index off, right? And then you can use that method. That's all raw, no library required. So I always prefer to write things in raw because the environment I'm in a geotab, we are, unless it's absolutely necessary, we are discouraged from using libraries. Because we're deploying into a ready environment that has libraries like Bootstrap or whatever, right? They don't want that conflict to happen. So I was actually thinking about the other day, why this happened? Because in the beginning, I was like, I was struggling really hard. Why does this happen? And now I look at it as a blessing. I was like, you know what? I was watching videos about pro programmers and their advice on what to do. They say to learn raw first. And I'm like, you know what? The universe kind of made it work out that way for me by actually forcing me and not giving me that option, because I can't upload libraries on Geotab World.
That's really interesting. So I know you mentioned a bit earlier about your sort of journey, and that included starting companies and ultimately now coming back to Geotab. Let's talk about that freelance journey and that startup journey. I know you've had some really interesting projects along the way and some interesting lessons. Tell us more about that.
Oh, the lessons are a lot. Where could I start? Early on lessons, don't be afraid, right? Be confident in yourself. I didn't have a lot of confidence early on. I didn't have a lot of stability growing up. Like, God bless my grandmother. Like, we can go back that far, right? And she was my rock. I never had parents that were there at all, right? Zero. So it's okay. It's a blessing, but everything has a purpose if you look back, because I feel like, I want to call it God, universe, whatever, will not do anything unto you except those things are good for you. That's going to strengthen you. So all my life, I've chosen to always be kind, right? I didn't take my experience as bitter and anger. I took it as the opposite, but way the opposite. Way too much. Like caring about what people think, and very difficulty decline invitations. Always thinking, how am I going to hurt them? Always just thinking about people, like being this extreme empathetic, like to the next level, right? This is kind of very bad. So I never dealt with it. I never faced these challenges early on. I just ignored them. and I just focused on the technical challenges. I got myself busy, and I never looked in the mirror and said, "Hey, like, how is your mental health? How are you doing?" Right? What is that you need to go, fix, right? Because there are some problems. I didn't like change. I never asked myself why. I never traveled. Every time there was an invitation to travel, I said no. I just stuck with what I knew, but I never understood and put that together as a child, right? I never, thought about, okay, what's causing that? So this is one of the lessons I learned after I became a little more mature after, business coaching and technology and all of that. I began to really address my mental health as well, and to say, okay, why do I make certain decisions? Why not just take counseling? There's nothing wrong with it. But my culture is frowned upon, right? The culture always tells you, hey, yeah, you're stressed out? Yeah, go pray. Yeah, go pray. I'll be okay. Go pray. Everything prayer. Everything prayer. You're stressed. You lost a job. You want a job. Go pray. Go pray. Go pray. But neglecting the idea of the medical sciences, like there is actually psychological, I don't know if you've heard about the neuroplasticity, right? We always thought that, the plane, stopped developing at a certain age as soon as you became like, an adult, right? Maybe 14, 15, right? Now you're a young person. That's when it develops, right? So whatever you learn, the paths are stuck. So your pattern is stuck forever. That's false. So neuroplasticity came and said, nope, that's false. That can be changed. And you can actually relearn and reshape your brain. So after I left my last position, I had 8 months where I wanted to just to focus on forget about, I know I can figure these job stuff out because, I'm passionate about what I'm doing and I'm lucky to have found it. But how do I fix myself so that, I don't push people away, number one. Number two, I learn to work with people better, right? I don't take all of my colleagues' tasks on myself. And then at the end of the day, I look bad as I've done in previous companies. These are all the mistakes I made. I don't allow scope creeping with customers or any parts I get, that I could be firm and nice at the same time. I had a whole meltdown. So my doctor, God bless him, set up tremendous counseling for me. And honest to God, like anybody who is going through mental barriers that sometimes it's getting in your way without you knowing, I recommend you talk to a medical professional, because you don't have to even take medication. I haven't taken a single medication. I just studied cognitive behavior. That's what I did. I started doing exercises with the counselor to figure out what triggers my behaviors. Like, what do I do? Something. What actions can I do? What could I do tomorrow to feel better? What do I do to change my routine? Okay, let's go to the gym. Let's go to the lake. I like hiking. I like music. Let's start mixing. So once you start to balance that out, you can do better at everything else, right? Because you're whole now. But if you neglect it all your time and then just blame, on, let's say, your parents, right, or your uncle or whoever, you just blame people, your job, they're this or that, you're never going to heal, because you're always living in this past of blame, right? And it's always going to follow you to the future, and it's going to impact your present, so you can never progress better. So I think the most important thing is just to accept for what it was, and then be grateful for what it was, be thankful that you're still here. Remember that stuff happened to make you better, not to put you down, and you can learn from it, and you can actually help people with it in the future one day, but only if you heal yourself first and you fix it. So that way you're not that pushover person, that you could be resilient, you can have that firm, you can say yes, no, without being, you don't have to get angry or yelling, because when people yell and get anger, that means that they don't know how to control their emotion, and they're really too much invested in that situation, so you got to pull that away. If you focus on the task always logically, whether it's communication about a project or anything, you're always going to get the good outcome, because you will look at it as if, okay, how do I protect myself? How do I protect them? How do I not hurt myself? I never asked these questions to myself that way. I never thought about how about me. I'm always about them. I'm the type of person that, like, honest to God, when I was unemployed, my last dollars are going to the homeless people, because I don't think about tomorrow. And I think that was incorrect in me, because I should always think about tomorrow too, and I should think about myself. So again, put all over my experiences as growing up, business, all of that. I think a lot of mistakes happen because of that. I'm opening up over this with you, and I'm comfortable to open up because I've already healed from it, and I've done a therapy for it. I think we can nitpick. I made a mistake in terms of like not negotiating the project or allowing scope creep. Well, the reason why I did those things, not because I'm a nice person, is because I didn't know how to say no, and I had this need to be loved. So therefore, I discovered that recently, so I will never make that mistake again. You can say no to scope creep, because you have to protect your employees, you have to protect your family, you have to protect your livelihood. So you have to price things out correctly and say no when something is too much. And no doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Learn to say no. That's it.
Mhm.
That's what I learned. Learn to say no.
I think those are all really important ideas. I mean, certainly the aspect of taking care of one's mental health, especially now, like this is a time where a lot of people are feeling very isolated and, you know, the world is just in this really strange flux. I mean, it's always been a challenge, especially as people transition into their career and that period of going from some sort of education and trying to find your way in the work world. I find that's a very tough time for a lot of people, right?
Totally,
Because
yeah.
you're still trying to figure out who you are and what you're great at and like developing your sense of self, right? So I think it's a really
And that's a
aspect.
journey, but that's a lifetime journey, right? That's not like today or tomorrow. That's always journey. We can always improve more. We can always improve and do better. And you're right. These times today they're tough, but I think they're also a blessing in disguise, minus the death. And, like I feel bad for the people who suffered, but I think these times are teaching us lesson as well. The lesson for self care, the lesson to be happy on your own. Some people have been forced to stay home, and they don't have to deal with that. So they're going to learn to deal with that. They're going to grow. And also, I think this time is revolution technology. Technology is going to be embraced. I think work from home is going to become the norm. And I think ordering from online is going to become the norm, right? And we're going to start to embrace our technology, which makes things easier for us, much better, and we're going to be much more accepting of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's true too, this aspect of now, a lot of us are spending more time in our homes, like alone and not having as many social engagements or interactions. And so what does that mean? Like, what do you do at that time? And sometimes that period, like having to internalize is the most challenging because you have to be like real with yourself, right? About who am I and what do I want and what am I even going to work on now, right? Or invest in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I say it's okay. It's okay. Like if you feel like you're going through some resistance with accepting the isolation and all of that, it's okay to cry. Like there's nothing wrong with that. You can go and it's actually good for your health. Like if you feel overwhelmed, go to the washroom, lock it, have a little bit of tear, come back at it, look in the mirror and say, hey, you're good, and get back what you have to do, right? And then just address that. Well, why do you feel like that? And go into writing. So what I personally do. And I do it heavily, especially when I was going through that period. I did a lot of writing, and I think writing can really show you the patterns. And even like right now, when you're sitting at home, and if you're out of job and you're looking for that job and you're not motivated, right? And it can hurt. I totally understand. So what I strongly recommend that you do is try to make a to-do list, right? And try to make a gratitude list as well. Like make a list of what you're thankful for, and then make a list of things that you want to get, right? Rather than sitting and just worrying, like get busy, right? And then make goals and then affirm it. Go look in the mirror, say it to yourself, and then treat the looking for a job like a full time. Get up in the morning, right? Apply, and network. It's not as simple as back in the day when we just go drop off the resume in person, and that was okay, or apply and they got back to us. That's not the case anymore. It's about who you know. So what I strongly recommend is that what worked for me, I'll give you if you're struggling and looking for your next role. I'll talk about how I got my job. I used LinkedIn heavily. I signed up for their, I think their pro plan, whatever they have, that you pay for $9. You get that 3 months free. So I took the 3 months and I think paid only 1 month to them, only 1 month, but it benefited me from, they gave me 4 months in total, 3 months free and only paid 1 month. That allowed me to send email to anyone. That allowed me to let recruiters know that I'm open for recruiting, and that allowed me to be part of the algorithm that pushed me to the top, right? And then I hired somebody, right? Like clean up your LinkedIn, right? Sometimes we're not the best writers, admit it, right? And I put together a paragraph this morning, and it was so much better when Caitlin, fixed it, right? So if some people are better writers than you, utilize them, ask them for help with the resume, ask them for help with the LinkedIn. Take a look at your photo LinkedIn as a professional now. Are you sending, at least a target number application every day? And are you following up? Following up means what? I'm going to shoot you a LinkedIn message just to let you know. Here's the link of the application. Here's my resume and cover letter again attached. I really hope to work for your company. Email HR personnel. That's what I did. I found all the HR at Geotab, from the head to the generalist. I talk to them. Even some people that work in departments that I want to work in, that are not here, that are in Vegas that help me. I've messaged them. So just tap into your network. Like the network is there to help you if you're looking for help. If somebody messaged me and said, hey, help me with this, it takes me 5 minutes to pass that on to somebody else I know, right? So it's about the idea of paying forward, right? So that's what you have to do. So the other option, keep sitting at home, keep feeling sad for yourself, and keep, just watching TV. And a lot of people I heard are doing like intoxicants now. Yeah, get drunk every day, go for it, right? That's not going to help you. Guess what? Tomorrow morning, your problems are there again, right? So I always say, face it. You're a human being. It's okay. You're allowed to have pain. You're allowed to lose your job. You're allowed to hurt, but deal with that quickly and then get into massive action of what you're going to do about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really great advice, especially about the networking and LinkedIn and that being the new reality of job hunting. Like we, and we've kind of talked to some of the participants about this before, but for our internship positions, we get something like 200, sometimes 400 resumes for a position. And, we're not a big company, right? So when you look at like what the reality is out there, like a lot of it is who you know, or maybe it's, who you're trying to connect with, right? So at least it's, I'm taking more notice of you. And, even for me, when I'm doing screening or interviewing candidates, the ones who actually reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm much more likely to take more time in reviewing that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
definitely great advice.
Thank you.
Now, you talked earlier about the transition, right? So you went from freelance to business, and then you decided to go back into the corporate world. So what prompted that change? Why did you decide to make that switch? And how did you go about that?
Absolutely. Honest answer, I wasn't ready as an entrepreneur. I wasn't. Sometimes you have to pivot, right? And I would be back one day, right? Once I have the skills, and I didn't have all the skills that I need to successfully deliver projects like that profit me in our organization. So I couldn't do that. So I need to go learn more about how business are ran. Even like a TD and those companies, I was never part of like a startup environment, right? That was like a corporate environment, very, rigorous, well defined, everything well clear. So the reason why I decided, honestly, it was kind of like it kind of happened randomly because at the time when I was doing my telematics job, the first one, I was still doing my business. But what happened was naturally I became busy with the telematics stuff because they became rely on me heavily in terms of like deploying all the new devices, right, and programming them, and then training the customers on the webware, how to use it, or helping salespeople close the sale from a technical standpoint, but not like, this is how you do things in terms of like, which I'm really good at, like understanding their business, right, and then presenting a few modules that help their business lower cost, right? So I would do a lot, right? So again, and that's one thing I learned too. I didn't know that very effectively. I used to be like, oh, well, if you want to create something, click here, click here, click here. Well, you don't even understand your audience. Who is your audience? What's their need? So I still need to learn a lot more. I knew that. So I naturally just stuck with this business because it was just, again, it was quite the benefit. They were paying for my own office that I had for my own business as well. And I was allowed to go continue to do the website development or whatever on the side. And continue to work with them. So multitasking 2 jobs, right? Then I just realized that I just became really unmotivated creating websites every day, right? In WordPress or HTML. And I was like, well, I don't think that's the future, that's not it, because people are going to be able to do their own websites. Right now, you can have an e-commerce website running in 20 minutes, right? You can go through one of the platforms that are ready already. So I was thinking about that idea as well, and I always wanted just to create a product. So what I did is I pulled away from selling website services, and I started working on something called, that time I think we called it eTrack, and it was supposed to solve the insurance industry problem about the secondary towing and towing fraud. So we're doing that. And even through that process, I've learned tremendous about, in terms of like not being ready to be an entrepreneur. Because even that I made, not a technical error in terms of the product itself, it's not the relationship I built. The relationship I built, it was built at a disadvantage against me, right? And I allowed it. So I started reflecting and said, you know what? You can have the whole product. I walked away from it. And that was the last time I wanted to do business ever again. And I said, I'm not ready to do business because, something that I'm so passionate about, I spent years thinking about it. This was just happened to me, was taken away from me, contractual things. So and that's when I realized I wasn't ready to be in business, and even mentally was not ready, not strong enough, because when those things happen, honestly, that I would cry, and like I'm very sensitive, and I would lock myself, like I gave the advice, to the washroom and just let it out. And it's just people taking advantage of you, but you allowed that. So that's when I realized, okay, I do need both therapy, and I also need to go to the corporate world, maybe a company that I know is, even like these smaller companies that can go out of business, and I don't know, like even that telematic industry. Like I'm not talking about IT services; those are great companies. I'm talking about like resellers, like people reselling. Because I'm working for somebody who doesn't even know all their platform, to be honest, right? They're reselling it to somebody else, and then I got lucky; they got purchased by somebody who owns their own products. But then their products, I didn't believe in it, right? I think they were like out of time and out of age. Then I thought to myself, you know what? Like I'm not ready to do business. I just want to go work for a company that I really respect. And I knew that company, and I know that company has a startup environment. I know that company is amazing management, and I can learn so much about, like I didn't even know about KPI management. I'm learning that now, which is awesome, right? I'm learning about communication, how to communicate. I have weekly training on how to present better and slow down the speaking. Like I'm learning so much. And I think when I graduate from this, I guess you will never graduate, but once I feel secure that I know enough to deal and interact with new contracts, perhaps one day I will go back into technical services, but that's not going to be websites and website development. I want to be able to connect device platforms. I want to things. I think the future is connecting things, right? Because everything has an API now, right? So if you can become a consultant that takes part A, let's say ADP payroll, part B could be whatever custom platform that company's utilizing, plug them together back and forth, quickly get them to interact, maybe include the GUI on their main platform, right? Make it a little more responsive, maybe more modern, and you can charge good money for that. I think that's more value added than trying to reinvent payroll and trying to reinvent that from the beginning and then creating something, here you go. I think we're in the age of stepping on the shoulders, looking around what's available, and trying to figure out how to connect them. So that's what I'm going to be doing one day. But for now, I need to grow professionally. I need to understand how to run an organization and how to interact with people, because when you work for a company, even when you're home, you're interacting with people in video chat, on chats, you learn a lot, right? And again, you're learning at the expense of your company. So I was like to myself, but this is like a win-win. I get to learn to develop software, learn new languages, learn management skills, right? Learn all of these skills, how to present PowerPoints, how even they document things internally, how they're locking, this is private, that's public. I didn't do any of that. So I'm learning how to run a business, right? Once I learn it and it's actually paid for by the company I work for, which is awesome, I'm getting free education. This is like an MBA, maybe mini MBA on how to run a company effectively.
I think that's a great attitude and way to look at it, and I think it's something that people sometimes take for granted, that how much you can learn from your position and from your company if you're curious and take advantage of those things. We have a question from Tristan. How have you dealt with communicating your own knowledge gaps in new companies?
So honesty is key. But also, like, don't try to emphasize in terms of, like, some of the gaps or some of the lack of, don't have that check mark. Don't try to emphasize on that. Try to instead spin it and try to get it as if you already have it. For example, don't write, I know JavaScript in your resume if you know JavaScript. Write down learning JavaScript and put down in bracket how many hours a day you committed to. And then show them that, hey, listen, here is a website I'm creating. Launch something on the site small and show them that you are putting some code in there. So you can explain your gap and like, even let's say if you have employment gap, which is another big one that they look for, you have to have a valid reason why. And a lot of companies, they're just looking for a good, honest answer. They're not looking for what's the best answer of Google. How do I answer the gap in resume? Google that. Well, he said that, I want to say that. Don't do that. Be honest with them. For example, maybe you're on medical leave, I don't know. Maybe you had parental commitment, I don't know. Maybe you're transitioning, but whatever it is, be honest about it. And if you don't have the knowledge that is required for that role, put it on the resume as learning, but then have a validation link in there in your resume of where you upload projects. It could be smallest creating like a tic-tac-toe game, right? And guess what? If you want to create a tic-tac-toe game, go to YouTube. JavaScript tic-tac-toe game. 40-minute, 50-minute long video, follow step by step. Replicate, deploy it to your website. And then think about that code, comment on it. So that's what you do. You show them that you're continuously engaged in learning, and companies really, like, especially the technology companies, they appreciate that because they know that technology is constant learning.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. We do have time for some questions, so if anyone else has any, you're welcome to send them in the chat. And while people are thinking if they have anything else, maybe you can just share with us, what advice would you give to aspiring developers or, anyone who's sort of in a technology field and looking to break into the job market?
Perfect. So again, learning by doing, right? You never learn by reading or watching, right? And even like when you watch the videos and replicate those examples, try to read about the functions they're using, the methods they're using. Try to understand things deeper. Don't try to memorize things at all. There's an old coding joke that, everything is copied from Google, right? That's true. We do that. We do copy it, but we know what we're copying. You're supposed to know what you're copying. For example, get ready for interview questions. They may ask you, when you're authenticating, right? Why do you use the post method? Why? Why not get method, right? If you don't know the answer, that means you don't know basic JavaScript, right? Because that's something well known. And I didn't learn that too long ago. I'll be honest with you, maybe 4 months ago I've learned that, right? And then try to teach it. So what you do to practice the information is maybe make some PowerPoint presentations for your colleagues or your friends and try to explain some concepts in JavaScript or in Python, whatever language you learn. When you explain to other people, you actually learn more effectively. So I'm actually now feeling better in terms of API and web methods because we just came out of 1 month seminar in July. And I was one of the instructors. When I heard, I laughed. I didn't expect it either, right? But that first meet every night to study all of July, right? So I had all my daily tasks, right? So we spent about 1 month getting all the presentations ready. There are about 17 different lectures on various topics. What is an API as basic as that? To async and await, to web methods, right? To particular examples in terms of adding developments that we do, how to set up a general local environment, how to deploy it, how to build it, how to troubleshoot, all of that. So I had to teach it. And again, I knew maybe 40% before July of the API of the web request. And I didn't really understand JavaScript very thoroughly yet. I'm still learning the method. So that project, actually, that presentation forced me, because I had to teach 2 set of groups every morning. One, about maybe 20 people show up, and the other, I think, was a little more popular, but 30. And any question would come up. So I had to present for 20 minutes, let them work, and then they can ask me questions. I was busy for 2 hours every day. But then that means that I had to prep about 3 hours or 2 hours every night the night before, which kind of forced me to learn these things. So I would say the best way to learn programming or anything is just by doing. Create projects and create presentations to reinforce those projects and to try to explain it. Teach it to somebody, if you can teach, let's say, what is an array, and create a very basic function that moves through the array, right, and grab something out of it. If you can take that concept and explain to somebody who's never seen an array and they totally understand it, then that means you totally understand it too. But if you cannot, then you don't, right? That means you just memorized it. So don't memorize, try to understand them. Try to understand the syntaxing. And guess what? Don't worry. With the syntaxing, over time, you're going to get used to it. The more you type, muscle memory, right? Brain memory. It's going to become more efficient, and you're going to be like, oh, yeah. So you're at async function, blah, okay, return new promise. You got the whole structure now. Okay, do whatever I got to do. Okay, got to resolve it here. If something bad happened, I got to reject it here, call back. So you'll begin to understand the structure, right? Don't be one of those people that just look at the code and say, oh, yeah, that's so cool, copy paste. No, ask yourself, okay, what is that doing, right? What is, first of all, I keep using this example, asynchronous, because it's a big thing if you want to get into web development using APIs, because JavaScript is synchronous language. So it goes that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it goes from top, boom, 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 boom. But with web request, JavaScript does not wait for it, right? So it treats it synchronously, right? So by the time that call comes back, let's say if I said I'm going to console log, hello, Caitlin, or I'm going to do a get web request from Prepper, right, database to return listed users. Which one is going to finish first? Hello, Caitlin. It'll be right on the console log, way before that came back. But if hello, Caitlin function uses that web request, it's going to crash. So that's why async and await is used. Async method makes the web request synchronous. Why? Because another function below that tells it, yo, wait for this function to complete. When it's done, do whatever you want with it.
Right.
Learn the concept deeper.
Yeah, I think that's really great insights for everyone. We have a question also around learning. So they're asking about at what point should we start learning libraries? You mentioned earlier that you should learn the language raw first. So at what point is someone ready to introduce that?
Yeah, I couldn't answer that, to be honest. It's whenever you're ready. If you feel like you're a fast learner, you can do it within 3-4 weeks. Go ahead and start the library. But I would say here's the general rule: don't use any libraries until you can write a full application, right? Without relying on much libraries at all. You can use like map plugins, no problem, right? The map, that's just a map. You don't want to invent a map, so use the map plugin, but don't use like Bootstrap or jQuery stuff till you're able to do some of the complicated stuff that jQuery will require on your own. For example, that checkbox example I gave you. If you can write that method from scratch, go ahead. Stay away from libraries. I would say if you're starting, let's say today, I would say don't do it until you have one big project launched. In terms of raw.js, you're allowed to use map plugins. Don't worry about that. Don't reinvent like big things, right? For maps, go ahead, use Leaflet or whatever you want to use for Google. Their APIs, use it, integrate it, but build some tool that is like, maybe create a checklist for yourself. I don't know, like create a project that requires a lot of different functionalities, and don't use a library. And I would say if you want to use a library, don't do it until a year after you start coding. I don't plan to touch library until 2021, to be honest.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for all of your insights and sharing your stories. I know everyone appreciated it, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Prepper Team. My pleasure, and everyone, best of luck. Rooting for you. Do well.
Yeah, have a great afternoon, everyone.
Right.